The corporate jet sat frozen on the taxiway, swallowed by white fog so thick you couldn't see 5 feet ahead. Inside, a CEO watched her billion-dollar empire crumble in real time while her phone buzzed with increasingly desperate messages from the board. 17 minutes earlier, she'd laughed in the face of a single dad working the airport desk, dismissed his warning like he was nothing. Now that same man stood in the doorway of the terminal, the only person in Stone Valley who knew how to save her. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let me see it. The fluorescent lights in Stone Valley Regional Airport buzzed with that particular frequency that comes from bulbs nobody's bothered to replace in 6 months. Ethan Brooks sat behind the front desk, half watching the weather radar on his ancient desktop monitor, while Sophie worked on her coloring book in the chair beside him. She was doing that thing she always did, staying perfectly inside the lines, tongue poking out the corner of her mouth in concentration. "Daddy, is purple okay for clouds?" she asked, without looking up. "Purple's great, sweetheart." Ethan glanced at the clock. 8:47 p.m. His shift ended at 11, which meant he'd have her in bed by midnight if the roads stayed clear. Not ideal, but better than the alternative. The alternative was leaving her with Mrs. Patterson next door, and Sophie hated that. Said the house smelled like old magazines and cats. The radar showed something that made Ethan's stomach drop. The fog system moving through the valley had accelerated. Not by much, maybe 15-20 minutes ahead of the forecast. But enough. More than enough. He pulled up the Regional Weather Service data, cross-referenced it with the Automated Surface Observation System, then checked the visibility readings from the towers. All of it confirmed what his gut already knew. They had maybe 30 minutes before this airport became completely inoperable. "Sophie, baby, I need you to sit real still for a bit, okay? Daddy's got to make some calls." She nodded, already lost in her purple clouds. Ethan reached for the phone just as the front doors swung open with enough force to rattle the safety glass. A woman strode in like she owned the terminal, probably because in her world she owned most things. Designer coat that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly salary. Heels that clicked against the tile with the rhythm of someone who'd never had to slow down for anybody. She was followed by 4 other people in expensive suits, all talking simultaneously on their phones. The woman, early 30s, dark hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, barely glanced at Ethan before addressing someone behind her. "Marcus, how fast can we get airborne?" An older man, late 50s, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades in cockpits, stepped forward. "Ms. Hale, we need to file the flight plan and complete the pre-flight inspection. Give me 20 minutes. You have 12. She turned to a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a permanent scowl. "Derek, call the Denver office. Tell them we're wheels up in 15 minutes. The scowling man, Derek, nodded and immediately started barking into his phone about acquisition deadlines and market closures. Ethan stood up. "Excuse me." Nobody looked at him. "Excuse me," he said again, louder this time. Victoria Hale finally turned, and the look she gave him was the kind you'd give a waiter who'd interrupted an important conversation. Mildly annoyed, mostly indifferent. "Yes? I'm Ethan Brooks, Night Operations Coordinator. I need to inform you that we've got a severe weather advisory developing faster than forecasted. The fog system moving through the valley is going to ground all flights in approximately 30 minutes. If you're planning to depart, you need to do it in the next 10 to 15 minutes, or you're not leaving tonight." Victoria stared at him for a beat, then turned back to her pilot. Marcus? Captain Marcus Reed, to his credit, walked over to Ethan's desk and looked at the radar display. His expression shifted immediately. "He's right, that's moving fast." "How fast?" Victoria asked. "Fast enough that if we don't leave in the next 15 minutes, we're stuck here until tomorrow morning at the earliest." Derek stepped forward, phone still pressed to his ear. "That's unacceptable. We have the Meridian acquisition closing at 7 a.m. Denver time. If we're not in that room, then somebody else signs the papers," Ethan said quietly. "I understand it's inconvenient, but weather doesn't care about your schedule." Derek's face flushed red. "Inconvenient? Do you have any idea what's at stake here? This is a $900 million acquisition. $900 million. And you're telling me some fog is going to... I'm telling you that fog is going to reduce visibility to 0 within half an hour," Ethan interrupted. His voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath it. which means your pilot legally cannot take off, which means your $900 million deal sits on the ground whether you like it or not. Marcus? Is he exaggerating? Victoria asked. The captain shook his head. No, he's actually being conservative. Looking at this system, I'd say we have maybe 20 minutes before the runway disappears. Victoria processed this information with the kind of cold calculation that had probably made her a CEO before she turned 31. Then we leave now. You need to file a... Ethan started. We have an approved flight plan already filed, Marcus cut in. We anticipated a late departure. I just need to update the times and complete the pre-flight. Which takes how long? Victoria demanded. Minimum 18 minutes. The math was simple and brutal. 18 minutes to pre-flight meant they'd be taxiing into soup. Maybe they'd make it. Probably they wouldn't. Ethan looked at the radar again, then at the visibility readings. You need to start now, right now. Skip anything that's not safety critical. Marcus nodded and headed for the door at a pace that was just short of running. The rest of Victoria's team followed, everyone suddenly moving with purpose. Victoria paused at the door and looked back at Ethan. For just a second, something that might have been gratitude flickered across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by that same executive mask. Thank you for the warning. Ma'am, I really think you should... But she was already gone, heels clicking across the parking lot toward the private hangar. Sophie looked up from her coloring. Is the lady going to be okay? I don't know, sweetheart. Ethan watched through the window as the executive team hurried across the tarmac. I really don't know. He picked up the phone and dialed the tower. Jimmy answered on the second ring. Tower, this is Brooks at the main desk. You seen what I'm seeing on the weather? Yeah, man, it's bad. I've already advised all inbound traffic to divert. We're about to shut down. There's a private jet trying to make a run for it. Gulfstream filed for Denver. There was a pause. They know they've got maybe 10 minutes? They know. Jesus. Okay, I'll keep the lights on as long as I can, but Ethan, if that fog hits before they're airborne, I know. Ethan hung up and turned back to his monitor. The fog bank crept across the screen like a living thing, swallowing the valley mile by mile. He'd seen systems like this before, back when he worked for Atlas Regional Airlines, back before everything fell apart, back when he was good at his job instead of just adequate, back when Sarah was still alive. Sophie went back to her coloring, completely unconcerned. That was the gift of being 6. You trusted that the adults around you would handle things. You didn't know yet that sometimes the adults were just as lost as everybody else. 10 minutes crawled by. Then 12. Then 15. Ethan stepped outside onto the observation deck. The air was already thick with moisture, that particular smell that comes right before fog rolls in heavy. In the distance, he could see lights on the private hangar, could see figures moving around the Gulfstream. His phone buzzed. Jimmy from the tower. Ethan, I'm shutting it down. Visibility just dropped below minimums. That jet's not going anywhere tonight. Copy that. Ethan ended the call and watched as the fog swallowed the runway whole, turning the entire airport into a wall of white nothing. 60 seconds later, his desk phone rang. He walked back inside, already knowing what he'd hear. Stone Valley Regional, this is Ethan. This is Captain Reed. We're stuck on the taxiway. Can't see more than 20 feet. We're shutting down and returning to the hangar. Understood. Do you need a ground vehicle to guide you back? Negative. We'll creep back on our own. But I need you to arrange ground transportation for my passengers. They're going to need hotels. Captain, this is Stone Valley. We have exactly one hotel, and it's got 14 rooms. On a Thursday night in October, I'd guess maybe half of those are available. There was a long silence. They're not going to like that. No, Ethan agreed. They're really not. 20 minutes later, Victoria Hale walked back into the terminal, looking like someone had just set fire to her entire world. Her perfect composure had developed cracks. Her coat was unbuttoned. Her hair had come partially loose from that severe bun. Behind her, Derek was red-faced and shouting into his phone about impossibilities and incompetence. Victoria walked straight to Ethan's desk and stopped. Just stopped and stared at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You tried to warn us, she said finally. Yes, ma'am. We didn't listen. No, ma'am. Her jaw tightened. How long until we can leave? The fog system should clear by mid-morning, probably around 10 or 11 a.m. Maybe later if it stalls over the valley. That's too late. The acquisition closes at 7 a.m. Denver time. If I'm not physically present in that boardroom, she stopped herself, shook her head. You don't care about any of that. I care that you're safe, Ethan said quietly, whether you believe that or not. Derek slammed through the doors, still on his phone. When he finished his call, he turned to Victoria with barely contained fury. The board says if we miss the signing, Huntington Corp is going to invoke the penalty clause. We'll lose the acquisition and pay $50 million in damages. $50 million, Victoria. This is a disaster. I'm aware, Derek. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, we just got grounded at some nowhere airport in the middle of... He gestured vaguely at the windows, at the fog, at everything. This, because apparently their weather service can't predict a fog bank. Actually, Ethan said, keeping his voice neutral, the National Weather Service predicted it accurately. It just accelerated by about 20 minutes. Weather does that sometimes. Derek turned on him like he'd found a target for all his frustration. Oh, that's fantastic. 20 minutes. We missed our window by 20 minutes because you people can't... Derek, Victoria's voice cut through the terminal like a knife. Stop. Stop, Victoria. This is his fault. If he'd warned us earlier, he warned us when we arrived. You heard him. I heard him. We chose not to listen. He's an airport clerk at a regional facility in the middle of nowhere. Forgive me for not taking meteorological advice from... Careful. Ethan's voice was quiet, but something in it made Derek take a step back. Be very careful what you say next. Sophie looked up from her coloring book, watching the angry man with wide eyes. Derek noticed her for the first time. You brought your kid to work? I'm a single parent. Yes, sometimes my daughter comes to work with me during night shifts. Is that a problem? It's unprofessional. So is screaming at strangers in an airport terminal, but here we are. Derek's face went from red to purple. He opened his mouth to say something, probably something he'd regret, but Victoria cut him off. Derek, go book whatever hotel rooms are available. Take the rest of the team. I'll handle this. Victoria, now Derek. The COO stalked off, radiating anger. The rest of the executive team followed, leaving Victoria alone with Ethan and Sophie in the terminal. Victoria stood there for a long moment, and Ethan watched something shift in her expression. The mask came down. What was underneath wasn't pretty. Exhaustion, frustration, fear, anger all mixed together. I'm sorry, she said finally, about Derek, about all of this. You don't need to apologize to me. Yes, I do. She glanced at Sophie, then back to Ethan. We came in here with our problems and our deadlines like they were the only things in the world that mattered. We didn't listen when you tried to help us, and now we're stuck, and that's on us. On me. Ethan nodded slowly. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Apology accepted. She seemed surprised by that, like she'd expected him to make her work harder for it. Just like that? Just like that. You had a choice between ego and safety. You picked wrong. It happens. Usually the consequences are worse than spending a night in Stone Valley, so honestly, you got off easy. Easy, she repeated like the word tasted strange. I'm about to lose a $900 million acquisition and probably my job. The board's been looking for a reason to replace me since I took over. Missing this signing gives them exactly what they need. Then I'm sorry about that. Are you? Ethan considered the question seriously. Yeah, actually, I am. I don't know you, but I know what it's like to lose something you worked hard for. It's painful. So yeah, I'm sorry you're going through it. Victoria stared at him like he was speaking a language she didn't understand. Finally, she shook her head. I need to make some calls. She walked toward those windows, phone already pressed to her ear, and Ethan went back to his desk. Sophie had abandoned her coloring and was watching Victoria with that intense curiosity kids have. Is she sad, Daddy? Yeah, baby, I think she is. Because of the fog? Because of a lot of things. The fog's just part of it. Oh. Sophie thought about this, then went back to her purple clouds. Ethan pulled up his personal laptop, the one he kept in his desk drawer for slow nights, and started doing something he probably shouldn't have been doing on work time. He started researching alternative routes to Denver. The thing was, he knew Stone Valley. Had grown up here, left for 12 years to chase a career in aviation operations, then came back when Sarah got sick. He knew every road, every shortcut, every tiny regional airport within 100 miles. And he knew something that Victoria Hale and her executive team definitely didn't know. There might be a way. It was complicated. It would require perfect timing, a little bit of luck, and convincing a bunch of stressed-out executives to trust a small-town airport coordinator they'd already dismissed once tonight. But it might work. He was still running the calculations when Victoria came back to the desk. She'd made 4 phone calls in 10 minutes, and each one had apparently gone worse than the last based on her expression. "Is there any chance," she said, "any chance at all that this fog clears faster than predicted?" "No." "You're certain?" "I'm certain." He turned his laptop around so she could see the screen. "This is the live radar, this is the valley topography, this is the wind pattern. That fog's going to sit here until at least mid-morning, probably longer. I've seen this system before. It doesn't move fast once it settles in the valley." Victoria stared at the screen and Ethan watched her process the reality of the situation. She was smart. You could see it in the way her eyes moved across the data, making connections, understanding the implications. "So that's it," she said finally. "It's over." "Maybe not." She looked up sharply. "What?" "There might be another option. It's not perfect, and it's going to require you to trust me more than you probably want to, but it exists." "I'm listening." Ethan pulled up a map of the region. Northbridge International Airport is 40 miles north of here. They're outside the fog system. I made some calls while you were talking to your board. There's a charter service there that has one more flight to Denver tonight. It leaves at 11:30 p.m. If we leave right now and drive fast, you might make it. Victoria's expression shifted from despair to cautious hope. "Why didn't you mention this earlier?" "Because 15 minutes ago it wasn't an option. The charter was fully booked, but I know the operations manager at Northbridge. We worked together years ago at Atlas Regional. I called in a favor. He bumped some passengers who were flying standby. You and your team now have 6 seats on that flight. But you need to leave right now, and you need to understand something." "What?" "The drive to Northbridge normally takes 45 minutes. In this fog, on these roads, at night, it's going to take longer. A lot longer. And it's going to be dangerous. The highway's probably already shut down because of the fog, which means we'll have to take back roads, service roads. Some of them aren't even paved. Your team is going to have to follow me in the dark through conditions that are going to make everyone nervous, and you're going to have to trust that I know what I'm doing." "Why would you do this?" Victoria asked. "We were horrible to you." "Because it's the right thing to do. And because my daughter's watching, and I want her to see that you help people even when they don't deserve it, especially when they don't deserve it." Victoria glanced at Sophie, who was now watching both of them with interest. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes or no. We're burning time." She pulled out her phone and made one more call. "Derek, get everyone to the parking lot. Now, we're driving to Northbridge. Yes, I'm serious. Because we don't have a choice. Just do it, Derek." She hung up and looked at Ethan. "Okay, we're in. What do we need to do?" "Get your team into whatever vehicles you have. Follow me. Don't pass me, don't try to take shortcuts, don't use your GPS. The routes I'm taking won't be on any map. Just stay close and trust me. And if we don't make it, then you spend the night in Stone Valley, miss your acquisition, and probably get fired. But at least everyone gets home safe eventually. That's all I can promise." Victoria nodded slowly. "Safe is good. Let's go." Ethan started shutting down his station, calling Jimmy in the tower to let him know he was leaving early, gathering up Sophie's coloring books and stuffed rabbit. Sophie, sensing the shift in energy, started putting on her coat without being asked. "Are we going on an adventure, Daddy?" "Yeah, baby, we're going on an adventure." "Okay." She slipped her hand into his, completely trusting. "Is the sad lady coming too?" "Yeah, she's coming." "Good. Maybe the adventure will make her less sad." Ethan looked at Victoria, who'd overheard and was trying not to smile. "Maybe it will, sweetheart. Maybe it will." They walked out into the parking lot together. The fog had gotten worse, turning the world into a white void. Visibility was maybe 30 feet. The executive team stood next to 2 black SUVs, looking cold and miserable and deeply unhappy. Derek saw Ethan and his face twisted into something ugly. "This is our guide? The airport clerk with a kid in tow?" "This is the person who's giving us a chance to make the signing," Victoria said sharply. So unless you have a better idea, I suggest you get in the car and follow him. Ethan unlocked his old Ford Explorer, 12 years old, 160,000 miles, a small dent in the rear quarter panel from where he had backed into a pole 3 years ago, and helped Sophie into her car seat. She settled in with her stuffed rabbit, already half asleep. He climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled up the route in his head. Not on GPS. In his head. Because he'd driven these roads 1,000 times, knew every turn, every pothole, every stretch where the asphalt gave way to gravel. Victoria's voice came through his open window. "We're ready. Stay close. If you lose sight of my taillights, taillight. Slow down, but don't stop. I'll wait for you. And tell everyone to turn off their high beams. They just reflect off the fog and make visibility worse." "Got it." Ethan pulled out of the parking lot, watching in his rearview mirror as the 2 luxury SUVs fell in behind him. 3 vehicles carrying 8 people, 9 counting Sophie, heading into the worst fog Stone Valley had seen in 3 years, chasing a charter flight that might already be gone. The odds weren't great. But Ethan had learned a long time ago that you don't give up just because the odds are bad. You keep moving forward. You do the next right thing. You take care of the people who need taking care of. Even when those people didn't take you seriously. Even when they looked at you and saw nothing worth respecting. Even when they made it clear you were beneath their notice. You helped them anyway. Because that's what Sarah would have done. That's what he wanted Sophie to learn. That's who he was trying to be. The fog swallowed them whole as they left the airport behind. 3 pairs of headlights cutting through the white darkness, heading north on roads that didn't exist on any map, chasing a deadline that was already slipping away. In the back seat, Sophie hummed quietly to herself, holding her stuffed rabbit, trusting completely that her father would get them where they needed to go. Ethan just hoped he could live up to that trust. For all of them. The first 5 miles were easy enough. Route 47 heading north out of Stone Valley was a straight shot, 4 lanes wide, well maintained. Ethan kept his speed at 45, even though visibility had dropped to maybe 20 feet. Behind him, the 2 SUVs stayed close, their headlights creating halos in the fog. Sophie had fallen asleep within minutes, her head tilted against the car seat, stuffed rabbit clutched tight. Ethan envied her that, the ability to just shut down and trust that everything would work out. He couldn't remember the last time he'd slept that easily. His phone rang. "Victoria." "Yeah?" "How much further to the highway turnoff?" Her voice was tight, controlled, professional. "About 2 miles. But we're not taking the highway." Silence on the other end. Then, "What?" "Highway's going to be shut down by now. State police always close it when fog gets this bad. Too many accidents. We're taking County Road 12 instead." "County Road 12 isn't on my GPS." "I know. That's why you're following me." Another pause. "Ethan, how bad are these roads going to get?" He appreciated that she asked directly instead of dancing around it. "Some of them are rough. Some aren't paved. You've got good vehicles, so you'll be fine as long as you stay behind me and don't try to go faster than I'm going." "Derek's already complaining that you're driving too slow." "Derek can complain all he wants. We're not racing. We're trying to arrive alive." "Fair point." She hung up. The turnoff for County Road 12 appeared out of the fog like a ghost. Ethan slowed to 30, turned right onto a 2-lane road that immediately narrowed. The asphalt here was older, cracked in places, with no center line painted. Trees pressed in close on both sides, their branches creating a tunnel that made the fog even thicker. This was the part where people usually got nervous. City drivers, especially. They saw narrow roads and darkness and fog, and their instinct was to speed up, to get through it faster. That instinct got people killed. Ethan kept it at 35. Steady, no sudden movements. His phone rang again. Not Victoria this time. Derek. "This is Ethan." "What the hell kind of road is this?" Derek's voice was sharp with anxiety, trying to disguise itself as anger. "There's no lighting, no lane markers, nothing. Are you sure this is the right way?" "I'm sure. Because if you get us lost out here, Derek, I've driven this road about 500 times. I know exactly where I'm going. What I need from you is to stay calm, follow my taillights, and let me do my job. Your job is supposed to be sitting behind a desk at a regional airport, not playing tour guide through the middle of nowhere." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. He took a breath, Let it out slow. You want to turn around and wait for the fog to clear? That's your choice. Nobody's forcing you to follow me. But if you want to make that charter flight, this is the route. Your call. He could hear Derek breathing hard on the other end. Finally, just drive. Ethan hung up and focused on the road. The fog was doing strange things with depth perception, making it hard to judge distance. A tree that looked 50 feet away turned out to be 10. A curve that seemed gentle turned sharp. He'd driven in conditions like this before, back when he was doing regional operations coordination, back when weather was just another variable to account for in his workday. That felt like a different life now, a different person. The road curved left, then right, then began a gradual descent into what locals called the lower valley. The fog thinned slightly as they dropped in elevation, visibility improving to maybe 40 feet. Small mercies. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text. Victoria. How much longer? He glanced at the clock. 9:23 p.m. They'd been driving for 18 minutes and covered maybe 8 miles. The charter left at 11:30. They had just over 2 hours to cover 32 more miles, and the worst roads were still ahead. He texted back with one hand while steering with the other. Hour and a half if the roads stay clear. Maybe longer. The response came immediately. That's cutting it close. Yeah, nothing else. She got it. They were racing time and weather and probability, and the odds were tight enough that complaining about it wouldn't help. County Road 12 merged with County Road 8 at a T intersection marked only by a stop sign half hidden in fog. Ethan turned left without hesitating. Behind him, the SUVs followed. This road was worse. 2 lanes, barely, with gravel shoulders that crumbled into drainage ditches on both sides. The asphalt was patchwork, stretches of decent surface interrupted by sections that were more pothole than pavement. Ethan kept it at 30, watching his mirrors to make sure the luxury SUVs weren't bottoming out on the rough patches. They seemed to be holding up okay. Good suspension, at least. Sophie stirred in the back seat, mumbled something about purple, then went still again. Ethan reached back and adjusted her blanket without taking his eyes off the road. The thing about driving in fog is that it messes with your sense of time. Minutes feel like hours. Distance becomes meaningless. You're just following the small circle of road visible in front of you, trusting that the next piece will appear before you run out of asphalt. It's meditative in a way. Isolating. Ethan had spent a lot of time isolated since Sarah died. Not physically, Sophie made sure of that, but emotionally. There was a wall he'd built between himself and the rest of the world, a barrier that kept everything at a manageable distance. Safer that way. Less chance of getting hurt again. He wondered sometimes if Sophie noticed, if she knew her dad was only half present most of the time, going through the motions of parenting while keeping the important parts of himself locked away. Probably she did. Kids were observant like that. His phone rang again. This time it was Captain Marcus Reed. Captain. Ethan, I just spoke with the Northbridge Tower. They've got light fog moving in from the south. Not as bad as what we've got here, but it's coming. If it reaches the airport before we do, they're going to ground that charter. Ethan processed that. How long do we have? Tower supervisor estimates they've got clear conditions for another 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. After that, it's 50-50 whether they stay open. So we're racing 2 fog systems. Looks like it. Great. Ethan checked his mirrors again. The SUVs were still there, headlights steady in the white darkness. How's the team holding up? Victoria's focused. Derek's panicking quietly. The others are just trying not to think about how many ways this could go wrong. And you? Marcus laughed, a dry sound with no humor in it. I've been flying for 32 years. Been in worse situations. Not many, but a few. We'll either make it or we won't. Nothing to do but keep moving forward. That's pretty much where I'm at. Yeah. A pause. Ethan, I looked you up while we were stuck at the airport. You used to work for Atlas Regional, right? Senior Operations Coordinator? That was a long time ago. You were good at it. I remember hearing your name. You helped coordinate that emergency landing in Cleveland during the ice storm, 6 years back? 7. Right, 7. That was impressive work. You saved a lot of lives that night. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't like thinking about Cleveland, about that version of himself who'd been competent and respected and whole. That person had died with Sarah. Marcus seemed to sense the silence meant drop it. Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for doing this. You didn't have to. Yeah, I did. Why? Ethan thought about that. Because my daughter's watching, and I want her to learn that you help people when you can, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Marcus hung up, and Ethan went back to focusing on the road. They were passing through farmland now, fields stretching out on either side, invisible in the fog but present nonetheless. He could smell them, that particular scent of turned earth and livestock and growing things. Stone Valley was agricultural country, had been for generations. People here worked hard, kept to themselves, took care of their own. Ethan had left all that behind when he was 22, chasing bigger dreams in bigger cities. Atlanta first, then Chicago, then Cleveland. Climbing the ranks at Atlas Regional, building a career, proving he was more than just a small-town kid with decent grades and a work ethic. He'd proven it too. Made senior coordinator by 28. Married Sarah at 29. Life was good. Life was exactly what he'd planned. Then Sarah got sick, and all those plans turned to smoke. They'd moved back to Stone Valley because Sarah wanted to be near her parents for treatment. Stage 3 breast cancer, aggressive, fast-moving. The doctors in Cleveland said she had options, clinical trials, experimental treatments. The doctors in Stone Valley said, make her comfortable. Sarah chose comfortable. She lasted 18 months. Long enough to see Sophie turn 4. Not long enough for so many other things. After she died, Ethan had intended to go back to Cleveland, back to his career. But Sophie had started kindergarten here, had friends, had Sarah's parents 10 minutes away, had stability. So Ethan stayed, took the job at Stone Valley Regional because it paid enough and the hours were flexible, and it kept him in aviation without the stress that had consumed his life before. It was a good job, a fine job. He didn't hate it, but every single day he felt like a ghost haunting his own life, going through motions that used to mean something and now just filled time. The road curved sharply right, and Ethan slowed to 25. The SUVs behind him slowed too, professional drivers who knew better than to crowd in these conditions. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Everything okay? He thumbed back. Yeah, sharp curves ahead. Stay slow. Okay? There was something almost funny about texting a CEO who was probably worth 50 times what he made in a year, instructing her to stay slow and having her just say okay. No argument, no ego, just okay. Maybe she was learning. Or maybe she was just desperate enough to take advice from anyone, even a small-town airport coordinator she'd dismissed 3 hours ago. Probably the latter. The curves continued for another 2 miles, hairpin turns that dropped elevation steadily. They were descending into the river valley now, following an old logging road that had been paved over sometime in the 1970s. The asphalt here was terrible, cracked and buckled from decades of freeze-thaw cycles and heavy trucks and general neglect. Ethan's Explorer handled it fine. It had handled worse, but he could hear the SUVs bottoming out occasionally on the rough patches. Expensive vehicles, but built for highways and parking garages, not backcountry roads in the middle of nowhere. They'd survive. Probably need some suspension work after this, but they'd survive. At the bottom of the descent, the road flattened out and ran parallel to Miller's Creek for about 3 miles. The fog was thicker here, moisture from the creek mixing with the general soup to create visibility that couldn't have been more than 15 feet. Ethan dropped to 20 miles per hour and turned on his hazard lights so the vehicles behind him had something bright to follow. This was the dangerous part. Not because of the road conditions, but because of wildlife. Deer loved this stretch, especially at night. One deer jumping in front of a car at 20 miles per hour was a bad night. One deer jumping in front of 3 vehicles traveling in convoy through fog was a disaster waiting to happen. Ethan kept his eyes moving, scanning the edges of his headlight beams for any sign of movement. Nothing yet. Small mercies. Sophie woke up. Daddy? Hey, baby, you okay? I'm thirsty. There's a juice box in the bag behind my seat. Can you reach it? Sounds of rustling, then a satisfied hum. Got it. Good girl. Are we almost there? Not yet. We've got about an hour left, maybe more. Okay. The sound of juice being consumed through a straw. Then, Daddy, why is the sad lady sad? Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror. Sophie was looking at him with those big brown eyes that were so much like Sarah's, it sometimes hurt to look at them directly. She's sad because she might lose something important to her. What's she going to lose? Her job, probably. Maybe other things, too. Sophie thought about this while drinking her juice. That's really sad. Yeah. But you're helping her, right? I'm trying. So maybe she won't be sad anymore. Maybe not. Sophie went back to her juice, apparently satisfied with this answer. Ethan went back to scanning for deer. They made it through the creekside stretch without incident, then started climbing again on the far side of the valley. The road here was better, newer asphalt, proper drainage, actual road signs. They were getting closer to Northbridge, entering areas that saw more traffic and therefore got more maintenance funding. Ethan's phone rang. Derek again. Yeah? How much further? Derek sounded exhausted. The anger burned out of him, replaced by simple fatigue. 22 miles, maybe 45 minutes if conditions stay like this. We're gonna make it? I think so. It's gonna be close, but yeah, I think we make it. Okay. A pause. I'm sorry about earlier. What I said about you and your daughter. That was out of line. Ethan hadn't expected that. It's forgotten. This acquisition is important. I've been working on it for 18 months. If it falls apart because of weather and bad timing, Derek's voice cracked slightly. I don't know what I'll do. You'll figure it out. People always do. Do they? Yeah, Ethan said, thinking about Sarah, about the year after she died when he couldn't figure out how to keep living. Yeah, they do. It doesn't feel like it at the time, but they do. Derek didn't respond to that. Just said, thanks for doing this, for helping us. We didn't deserve it. Everybody deserves help when they need it. I'm not sure that's true, but I appreciate you believing it. Derek hung up, and Ethan continued climbing. The road switched back up the side of the ridge, each turn marked by reflective posts that appeared out of the fog like ghosts. His phone showed 10:14 p.m. They had 76 minutes to cover 22 miles and get through Northbridge Airport security and reach the charter gate before it closed. Tight, really tight, but possible. At the top of the ridge, the fog finally started to thin. Not disappear, they were still driving through soup, but thin enough that visibility improved to maybe 50 feet. Ethan increased speed to 45, watching his mirrors to make sure the SUVs could keep up. They could. The descent on the north side of the ridge was gradual, the road winding through pine forest that smelled sharp and clean, even through the closed windows of the Explorer. This was the home stretch. 12 more miles to Northbridge, half of it on actual highway. Ethan let himself believe just for a moment that they might actually pull this off. That's when his phone rang with a call from Northbridge Operations. This is Ethan? Ethan, it's Jim Calloway at Northbridge Ops. We've got a problem. Ethan's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Fog's moving in faster than forecasted. We're still operational, but the charter service is getting nervous. They want to leave early if possible. How early? They're saying 11:15 instead of 11:30. Ethan looked at the clock. 10:19 p.m. 56 minutes to cover 12 miles and get 6 people through security and to the gate. Doable, but just barely. Can you ask them to hold until 11:30? We're close. Really close. I asked. They said no. FAA regulations say they can leave early if weather's deteriorating and all confirmed passengers are present. Your group was added last minute, so technically they can leave them behind without penalty. Jim, these people will lose everything if they miss this flight. I know, I'm sorry. I pushed as hard as I could. The charter captain says 11:15 is his final departure time, and if your passengers aren't at the gate by 11:10, he's closing the door. 51 minutes. Yeah. Okay, thanks for trying. Ethan hung up and immediately called Victoria. We've got a problem. He heard her take a breath, steel herself. Tell me. Charter's leaving at 11:15 instead of 11:30. We need to be at the gate by 11:10 or they're gone. Silence. Then, can we make it? I don't know. Maybe. We've got 12 miles to cover and 50 minutes to do it. If we push hard and if traffic is light and if security doesn't slow us down, then yeah, maybe. What do you need from us? I need you to have everyone's IDs ready. I need your team prepared to move fast once we hit the airport. No bathroom stops, no coffee runs, just straight to security and through to the gate. Can you do that? We can do that. And Victoria? Yeah? This is going to be close, like really close. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that we don't make it. Another pause. Longer this time. If we don't make it, it won't be because you didn't try. I know that. Okay. Okay. She hung up, and Ethan pressed down on the accelerator. The Explorer responded, speed climbing to 55, then 60. Behind him, the SUVs matched his pace. Sophie looked up from her juice box. Daddy, you're going fast. I know, baby. We're in a hurry. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. You just sit tight and hold on to Mr. Rabbit, okay? Okay. She went back to her juice, trusting completely. The road straightened out as they entered the outskirts of Northbridge. Streetlights appeared, creating halos in the thinning fog. Traffic lights. Stop signs. Civilization. Ethan checked the time. 10:31 p.m., 39 minutes. He knew a shortcut through the industrial district that would save 5 minutes but required running 2 red lights and taking a turn that wasn't technically legal. He took it anyway. The SUVs followed without hesitation. They flew through the industrial zone, past warehouses and distribution centers and trucking depots, everything closed and dark for the night. The road here was smooth, well-maintained for the heavy vehicles that used it during the day. Ethan pushed the Explorer to 70. His phone rang. He ignored it. Rang again. Still ignored it. On the third ring, he answered, Victoria. You're driving really fast. Yeah. Is that safe? Safer than missing your flight. Ethan, Victoria, I've got this. Trust me. She hung up. The industrial zone gave way to commercial strips, then residential neighborhoods, then finally the clear zone around Northbridge International. The airport appeared out of the thinning fog like a fortress, all lights and concrete and purpose. Ethan checked the time. 10:47 p.m. 23 minutes. He pulled into the passenger drop-off zone going faster than the posted 15-mile-per-hour limit, hit the brakes hard enough to make the tires squeal, and threw the Explorer into park. Everyone out, now! Victoria's team piled out of the SUVs like they were evacuating a burning building. Derek, Marcus, Victoria, 3 other executives whose names Ethan had never learned. They grabbed their carry-on bags and ran toward the terminal entrance. Victoria paused at Ethan's window. You're not coming? Can't. I've got Sophie, and she doesn't have ID. We just slow you down at security. Go. Run. Thank you, she said, and there was something in her expression that looked almost like respect. Thank you for everything. Go. She ran. Ethan watched them disappear into the terminal, then checked the time. 10:49 p.m. 21 minutes to get through security, find the gate, and board. He pulled out his phone and called Jim Calloway. Jim, they're in the building. Security entrance right now. Can you call ahead and tell TSA to expedite them? Already did. I've got a security supervisor watching for them. They'll move them to the front of the line. You're a lifesaver. We'll see. This is going to be tight, Ethan. I know. Ethan sat in the drop-off zone with his hazard lights on, watching the terminal entrance. Sophie had climbed into the front seat and was sitting beside him, still clutching her stuffed rabbit. Did the sad lady make it? She asked. I don't know yet, baby. They waited. 10 minutes. 15. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it. This is Marcus. Made it through security. Running for the gate. We'll update. 10:58 p.m. Another text. Gate in sight. They're still boarding. I think we're going to make it. 11:03 p.m. Final text. On the plane. Doors closing. We made it. Thank you. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Sophie looked at him with those big brown eyes. Is she happy now? Yeah, baby. I think she is. Good. Sophie yawned. Can we go home now? Yeah, let's go home. Ethan put the Explorer in gear and pulled out of the drop-off zone. The drive back to Stone Valley would take over an hour in normal conditions, probably closer to 90 minutes with the fog. He'd have Sophie in bed by 1 in the morning, maybe later. Tomorrow would be rough. He was working the day shift, which meant he'd be running on 4 hours of sleep at best. But they'd done it. Against the odds, against the weather, against time itself, They'd gotten Victoria and her team to that charter flight. It didn't fix anything in Ethan's own life. Didn't bring Sarah back. Didn't make him feel less like a ghost. Didn't change the fact that he was stuck in a job that was fine, but not fulfilling. In a town that was safe, but not exciting. In a life that worked, but didn't shine. But for tonight, he'd helped people who needed help. He'd shown Sophie what it looked like to do the right thing even when the right thing was hard. He'd proven to himself that he still had the skills, still had the instincts, still had something left from the person he used to be. That was worth something. Maybe not everything, but something. The fog was already starting to clear as they headed south on the highway. Sophie fell asleep again within minutes, and Ethan drove through the darkness with the radio off and his thoughts for company, heading home through a world that was slowly becoming visible again. His phone buzzed one more time. Text from Victoria. I don't know how to thank you properly, but I'm going to try. We'll talk soon. Ethan didn't respond. Just put the phone down and kept driving, Sophie sleeping beside him, the night growing clearer with every mile. The drive back to Stone Valley felt longer than the drive out, probably because adrenaline had stopped doing its job and exhaustion was creeping in to fill the empty spaces. Ethan kept the radio off, let the silence stretch, listened to Sophie's quiet breathing from the passenger seat. The fog had thinned to wisps by the time they reached the county line, and by the time they pulled into their driveway, the stars were visible overhead. Sophie stirred when he turned off the engine. We home? We're home, baby. He carried her inside, still half asleep, got her into pajamas without fully waking her, tucked her into bed with Mr. Rabbit positioned just right under her arm. She mumbled something that might have been good night, or might have been nothing at all, and then she was gone, breathing deep and even. Ethan stood in her doorway for a minute, just watching her sleep. Sarah used to do this. Stand in the doorway after putting Sophie down, just watching, like she was memorizing something precious before it could slip away. He understood that impulse now in ways he hadn't before. Sleep came hard that night. Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the drive, second-guessing every turn, every decision. They'd made it, but barely. If traffic had been heavier, if security had been slower, if the charter captain had decided to leave at 11:10 instead of 11:15, the whole thing would have fallen apart. Luck. That's what it had been. Skill and knowledge and preparation. Sure, but also luck. And luck wasn't something you could count on. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Text from an unknown Denver number. This is Victoria. We're in the meeting. The acquisition is moving forward. I wanted you to know. Thank you again for everything you did tonight. Ethan stared at the message for a long time before responding. Glad it worked out. Good luck with the deal. 3 dots appeared, showing she was typing. They disappeared. Appeared again. Disappeared. Finally, a message came through. Can I call you tomorrow? I'd like to talk about something. Sure. The dots appeared once more, then stopped. No further messages came through. Ethan set the phone down and went back to staring at the ceiling. Sleep finally took him somewhere around 3 in the morning, restless and thin. The alarm went off at 6:30. Ethan felt like he'd been hit by a truck. Sophie was already awake, sitting in the living room watching cartoons with the volume low, still in her pajamas. Morning, baby. Morning, Daddy. You look tired. I am tired. Me too, but I'm also hungry. Pancakes? Yes, please. They went through the morning routine on autopilot. Pancakes, shower, getting Sophie dressed for school, packing her lunch. The 20-minute drive to Stone Valley Elementary. Ethan walked her to the door like he always did, kissed the top of her head like he always did, watched her run inside like he always did. Normal. Everything normal. Like last night had been a dream instead of something that actually happened. His shift at the airport started at 9. Ethan stopped at the gas station for coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since yesterday, then drove to work in a fog that had nothing to do with weather and everything to do with exhaustion. Jimmy was working the tower when Ethan arrived. He called down to the main desk within 5 minutes. Dude, you're a legend. The story's already all over the regional aviation network. Single dad saves corporate executives with midnight convoy through the fog. It's like something out of a movie. It wasn't that dramatic. Bullshit. Marcus Reed's been calling everyone he knows, telling them you're some kind of operations genius. Says you coordinated the whole thing like a military extraction. Ethan rubbed his eyes. Marcus is exaggerating. Maybe, But the point is, people are talking. You made us look good, man. Stone Valley Regional isn't just the tiny airport nobody cares about anymore. We're the place with the coordinator who actually gives a damn. Great. Can we stop talking about it now? Jimmy laughed. Nope. I'm dining out on this story for months. Get used to it. The day crawled by. Routine paperwork, routine calls, routine everything. 2 small aircraft departed for routine cross-country flights. 1 flight school trainer did pattern work for an hour. A Cessna 172 landed for fuel. Normal airport operations on a normal Thursday in October. Ethan's phone rang at 2:15. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then changed his mind. This is Ethan. Ethan, it's Victoria Hale. Is this a good time? He glanced around the empty terminal. Yeah, it's fine. How'd the acquisition go? We signed the papers at 6:50 this morning. The deal's done. Meridian Industries is officially part of our portfolio. Congratulations. Thank you. A pause. Listen, I'm calling because I owe you more than just a thank you text. What you did last night, getting us to that airport, getting us on that flight, you saved this acquisition. You saved my career probably, and I want to make that right. You don't owe me anything. I disagree. But more than that, I have a proposition for you. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. I'm listening. I've been thinking about last night, about how you saw the problem before anyone else did, how you prepared a solution without being asked, how you executed under pressure without panicking. Those are skills our company needs, skills I need. Victoria Stoll, please let me finish. I'm offering you a position. Aviation Operations Advisor. You'd work directly with our executive team, consult on logistics, help us avoid the kind of disasters that almost happened last night. The pay is substantially more than what you're making now. The benefits are excellent. And here's the important part. The schedule is completely flexible. You could work from Stone Valley, set your own hours around Sophie's school schedule, travel only when absolutely necessary. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Couldn't. The offer was everything he should want. Better pay, better opportunity, a chance to use his actual skills instead of just managing a quiet regional airport. But I don't know, he said finally. You don't know? I'd need to think about it. Talk to Sophie, figure out if it's the right move. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Of course. I'm not expecting an answer today. Take your time. I'm sending you a formal offer letter by email tonight. Look it over. Think about it. Call me when you're ready to discuss details. Okay. Ethan, can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you hesitating? This is a significant step up from where you are now. Better everything. So why the hesitation? Ethan looked around the terminal. Empty chairs. Quiet desk. Windows looking out at runways where nothing much ever happened. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't prestigious. It wasn't the kind of job that impressed people at parties. But it was stable, predictable, safe. Because I've had the exciting career before, he said quietly. I've had the important job and the big responsibilities and the constant pressure. And when my wife got sick, none of it mattered. None of it helped. All it did was get in the way of being there for her. So I chose this instead. Chose stability over ambition. And I don't know if I'm ready to go back to that other life, even if the money's better. Victoria didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was different, softer. I understand, I do. Just promise me you'll think about it. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. She hung up, and Ethan sat at his desk staring at nothing in particular. The terminal was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of Jimmy talking to a departing aircraft from the tower. His email pinged an hour later. Formal offer letter from Victoria's company. He opened it, scanned the numbers, and felt his stomach drop. The salary was almost 3 times what he made at the airport. 3 times. With performance bonuses that could push it even higher. Benefits that included full medical, dental, vision, life insurance, 401k matching, education savings for Sophie. It was more money than he'd made even at the height of his career with Atlas Regional. And the schedule flexibility was real. The offer letter specified he could work remotely, set his own hours, decline travel that conflicted with family obligations. They'd even provide a home office stipend and technology allowance. It was perfect, except for the part where it wasn't. Ethan closed the email and went back to work. but the offer sat in his head like a stone, heavy and unavoidable. He picked Sophie up from school at 3:30. She climbed into the Explorer chattering about art class and how her friend Emma had shared cookies at lunch and how Mr. Patterson, the music teacher, had let them play tambourines. "Sounds like a good day," Ethan said. "It was a really good day. How was your day?" "It was okay." "Just okay?" "Yeah, baby, just okay." They stopped at the grocery store on the way home. Sophie insisted on pushing the small cart, nearly taking out a display of canned soup in the process. They got the usual things: milk, bread, chicken, vegetables, the kind of cereal Sophie liked with the cartoon character on the box. At the checkout line, Sophie looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. "Daddy, are you sad?" "No, baby, I'm not sad. You look sad." "I'm just tired. Long day yesterday, remember?" "Oh." She thought about this while the cashier scanned their items. "The adventure with the fog?" "Yeah, that one." "Did you have another adventure today?" "No adventures today, just regular work." "That's boring." "Yeah," Ethan agreed, handing cash to the cashier. "Yeah, it kind of is." They made dinner together, tacos, Sophie's favorite. She helped tear up lettuce and arrange taco shells on plates while Ethan cooked the meat and diced tomatoes. They ate at the small kitchen table, Sophie talking about school, Ethan half listening while thinking about Victoria's offer. After dinner, while Sophie was watching her allotted hour of television, Ethan called Sarah's parents. Her mother answered on the third ring. "Ethan, honey, how are you?" "I'm okay, Linda. How are you and Tom?" "We're fine. Arguing about whether to replant the rose garden this fall or wait until spring. The usual exciting retired life." "What's going on?" "I got a job offer." Linda went quiet. "Tell me about it." Ethan explained the whole thing: the fog, the convoy, Victoria Hale, the offer letter. Linda listened without interrupting, which was one of the things he'd always appreciated about her. She didn't rush to fix things, just listened. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's quite an offer." "Yeah." "But you're not sure if you should take it." "No, yes. I don't know. The money's great. The flexibility's great. It's everything I should want. But I don't know if I can do that kind of work again. The pressure, the constant problem solving, the high stakes. I did that for years, and when Sarah got sick, I couldn't turn it off. Couldn't stop thinking about work even when I should have been present with her. And I don't want to be that person again. Don't want Sophie growing up with a dad who's physically there, but mentally somewhere else all the time." Linda sighed, the kind of sigh that held years of watching her daughter die, and her son-in-law try to hold everything together. "Ethan, can I tell you something?" "Of course. You're not the same person you were when Sarah was sick. You've changed, grown. You're more present now than you were back then, even with a job that bores you half to death. So if you take this new position, you won't become that person again. You'll be someone new, someone who learned from the past but isn't trapped by it." "How can you be sure?" "Because I've watched you with Sophie for the last 4 years. I've seen you choose her over everything else, every single time. That doesn't just disappear because you take a better job." Ethan rubbed his face with his free hand. "I don't know, Linda." "You don't have to know yet. Just think about it. Really think about it. Not about what Sarah would want or what you think you should do. Think about what's actually best for you and Sophie. That's what matters." "Okay." "And Ethan?" "Yeah?" "Whatever you decide, we support you. You know that, right?" "I know. Thanks, Linda." He hung up and sat in the kitchen while Sophie's cartoon played in the other room. The house felt too quiet and too loud at the same time, filled with the absence of the person who should have been there to talk this through with him. Sarah would have known what to do. She always knew what to do. But Sarah was gone, and Ethan was alone with decisions that felt too big to make by himself. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. "I know I said take your time, but I wanted to mention something I forgot earlier. If you take the position, there's a signing bonus. $50,000. I thought you should know." Ethan stared at the number. $50,000. That was a new car to replace the aging Explorer. That was Sophie's college fund getting a massive boost. That was security and breathing room and options they didn't currently have. He typed back, "That's generous. I'm still thinking." "Of course, no pressure. Just wanted you to have all the information." The dots appeared again. disappeared, appeared. Ethan, I want you to know something else. The reason I'm making this offer isn't just because you're good at what you do. It's because of the way you do it. You care about people. You make decisions based on what's right, not what's easy. Those qualities are rare, especially at the executive level. We need that. I need that. He didn't know how to respond to that, so he just said, "Thanks." Sophie appeared in the doorway. "Daddy, my show's over. Can we read books now?" "Yeah, baby. Go pick out 3 and I'll meet you in your room." She ran off and Ethan put his phone down. Whatever decision he made could wait until tomorrow. Right now, his daughter wanted to read books before bed, and that was more important than anything else. They read 3 Dr. Seuss books, Sophie's current obsession, and then Ethan tucked her in with Mr. Rabbit and turned off the light. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "Are we going to have more adventures?" "Maybe. Would you like that?" Sophie thought about this seriously. "I liked helping the sad lady. That was a good adventure. But I also like boring days when we just do regular stuff." "Me too." "So maybe we can have both, sometimes adventures and sometimes boring?" Ethan smiled in the darkness. "Yeah, sweetheart. I think we can have both." "Okay. Good night, Daddy." "Good night, Sophie." He left her door cracked open the way she liked it and went back to the kitchen. The offer letter was still open on his laptop, $50,000 and triple salary and everything he should want staring at him from the screen, sometimes adventures and sometimes boring. Maybe Sophie had just solved his entire dilemma without realizing it. The next morning, Friday, started normal enough. Breakfast, school drop-off, the drive to work. But when Ethan walked into the terminal, there were 3 people waiting for him at the front desk: Victoria Hale, Captain Marcus Reed, and Derek, the COO who'd spent most of the previous night insulting Ethan's competence. Ethan stopped. "What are you doing here?" Victoria stood up. "We wanted to apologize properly, in person." "You already apologized." "No, I sent you a text message and made you a job offer. That's not the same thing as actually apologizing." She gestured to Derek. "We wanted to do this right." Derek stepped forward, and Ethan could see the effort it took for the man to humble himself. "I was out of line the other night. What I said about you, about your daughter, about this airport, all of it was wrong. You tried to help us, and I responded by being an ass. I'm sorry." "It's forgotten." "It shouldn't be. You saved our acquisition, probably saved my job too, since I'm the one who convinced Victoria to ignore your first warning. So thank you." "And I'm sorry." Marcus Reed spoke up then. "I've been in aviation for 3 decades. I've worked with hundreds of coordinators and operations personnel. You're one of the best I've seen. What you did Wednesday night, the preparation, the execution, the calm under pressure, that was professional level work. You should be proud." Ethan didn't know what to say to any of this. He settled for, "I appreciate you coming all this way to say that." Victoria pulled an envelope from her briefcase. "This is a check, not payment. You made it clear you didn't do this for money. This is a donation to Stone Valley Elementary School's music program. $50,000. I looked up Sophie's school online, saw they cut the music program last year due to budget constraints. This brings it back. All of it. Instruments, teacher salary, everything." Ethan took the envelope, opened it, saw the check. $50,000 made out to Stone Valley Elementary School. "Victoria, it's the right thing to do. You helped us when you didn't have to. This is us helping your community because you're part of it and you care about it. Sophie gets her music program back. The school gets funding it needs. Everyone wins," Derek added. "And if you don't take the job offer, we understand. No hard feelings. This donation stands regardless of your decision." Ethan looked at the 3 of them, corporate executives who'd flown to Stone Valley on a Friday morning just to apologize and hand him a check that would change his daughter's school. "I need to sit down," he said. They spent the next hour in the terminal cafe, drinking terrible coffee and talking. Not about jobs or offers or obligations, just talking. Victoria told stories about her early days climbing the corporate ladder, the mistakes she'd made, the lessons she'd learned. Marcus talked about close calls in his flying career, moments where everything could have gone wrong but didn't. Derek, surprisingly, opened up about his own struggles with work-life balance, how his marriage had nearly fallen apart 2 years ago because he couldn't stop prioritizing the company over his family. "I've been thinking about what you said," Derek told Ethan, about choosing stability over ambition for Sophie. That took courage. More courage than I've had. I'm still trying to figure out how to be good at my job without sacrificing everything else. It's hard, Ethan admitted. I don't have it figured out either. Most days I feel like I'm failing at both. But you're trying. That counts for something. Victoria checked her watch. We need to get going. Flight back to Denver leaves in 40 minutes. She looked at Ethan. Have you thought more about the offer? Yeah. And? Ethan took a breath. I want to take it, but I need some conditions. Name them. 1. I work from home unless absolutely necessary. No pressure to come to the office, no expectations of FaceTime. I show up when there's a genuine need, and that's it. Done. 2. If Sophie needs me, I'm unavailable. School events, sick days, parent-teacher conferences, whatever. Family comes first, always, no exceptions. Agreed. 3. If I start feeling like the work is taking over my life, if I start becoming the person I was before, the one who couldn't be present even when he was physically there, I can step back or resign without penalty. Victoria nodded slowly. I can agree to that, but I want to add a condition of my own. What? If you start feeling that way, you talk to me first. Give me a chance to help fix whatever's wrong before you walk away. Deal? Ethan extended his hand. Deal. They shook on it, and just like that, Ethan's life changed direction again. Victoria, Marcus, and Derek left for their flight. Ethan sat at his desk with the check for $50,000 and a future that looked completely different than it had 3 days ago. Jimmy called down from the tower. Dude, what was that about? Why were fancy executives in our terminal? Long story. You're killing me with these non-answers. I'll tell you later. Right now I need to make a phone call. Ethan called Stone Valley Elementary and asked to speak with Principal Morrison. When she came on the line, he explained about the donation, about the music program coming back, about instruments and teacher salaries and everything the money would fund. Principal Morrison cried on the phone. Actually cried. Ethan, do you know what this means? We've had parents calling for a year asking when music would come back. Kids who wanted to learn instruments. And we had to say no, we couldn't afford it. Now we can say yes. Because of you. Not because of me. Because of some people I helped who wanted to pay it forward. However it happened, thank you. The kids are going to be thrilled. Sophie's going to be thrilled. Don't tell Sophie yet. I want to tell her myself. Of course. He picked Sophie up from school that afternoon feeling lighter than he had in months, maybe years. She climbed into the Explorer with her backpack and a painting she'd made in art class, Purple Clouds Again, Sophie's current artistic phase. Daddy, guess what? What? Mrs. Chen said we might get music class back soon. Is that true? Yeah, baby, it's true. How? Some people I helped decided to donate money to your school, enough to bring back the whole program. Sophie's eyes went wide. Really? Like really, really? Really, really. She threw her arms around him as much as the car seat would allow. That's amazing. Emma's going to be so happy. She wanted to learn drums, and I want to learn piano like Mommy did. Ethan's throat tightened. He'd forgotten Sarah played piano. Or not forgotten exactly, but pushed it away with all the other memories that hurt too much to examine closely. Yeah, you can learn piano. They drove home through afternoon sunshine, fog completely gone, everything clear and bright. And for the first time since Sarah died, Ethan felt like maybe the future didn't have to be something he just endured. Maybe it could be something he actually participated in. That night, after Sophie was in bed, Ethan replied to Victoria's offer letter. He typed out his conditions, signed the document electronically, and hit send before he could second-guess himself. 5 minutes later, his phone rang. Welcome to the team, Victoria said. Thanks, I think. She laughed. You're going to be great at this, I know it. I hope you're right. I am. And Ethan? Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For helping us when you didn't have to. For showing me what actual leadership looks like. For reminding me that there's more to life than just winning. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe. But you helped me figure it out faster. That matters. They talked for another 10 minutes about start dates and paperwork and logistics. When Ethan finally hung up, it was past 10 o'clock. He was exhausted, wrung out, running on fumes. But he was also something else. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. hopeful. He walked to Sophie's room, stood in the doorway, watching her sleep like Sarah used to do. Mr. Rabbit was tucked under her arm. Her breathing was deep and even, peaceful. "We're going to be okay," Ethan whispered to the darkness. To Sarah, maybe. To himself. To whoever was listening. "We're going to be okay." And for the first time in 4 years, he actually believed it. 3 weeks later, Ethan was sitting in his newly converted home office, really just the spare bedroom with a desk and 2 monitors, when his phone rang with a Denver area code he didn't recognize. "This is Ethan." "Ethan Brooks?" A woman's voice, clipped and professional. "This is Jennifer Walsh, VP of Human Resources at Meridian. I need to speak with you about a sensitive matter regarding your employment." Ethan's stomach dropped. 3 weeks. He'd lasted 3 weeks in the new position before something went wrong. "Okay, what's going on?" "There's been an allegation made against you. I need you to understand that we take all complaints seriously, and this is part of our standard investigation protocol. You're not being accused of anything formally at this point, but we need to discuss the situation." "What kind of allegation?" Jennifer paused. "Derek Morrison has filed a complaint stating that you were responsible for the delayed departure on the night of October 15th. He's claiming that your failure to provide adequate weather warnings nearly cost the company the Meridian acquisition, and that Ms. Hale has been misrepresenting the events of that evening to protect you." Ethan sat back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "You're kidding." "I'm not. Mr. Morrison has provided written testimony along with several supporting documents. He's requesting a formal investigation into the incident and your subsequent hiring. Does Victoria know about this?" "Ms. Hale is currently in Singapore for meetings. She's been informed and will be returning early to address the situation. In the meantime, I need to ask you some questions. Do you have time now?" "Yeah, I have time." Jennifer walked him through that night step by step. When had he first noticed the weather change? When had he warned the executive team? What exactly had he said? Had anyone asked him not to warn them? Had Victoria instructed him to facilitate the alternative route to Northbridge? Ethan answered everything honestly, exactly as it had happened. He didn't embellish, didn't try to make himself look better, just told the truth. When he finished, Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "And you have documentation of your weather monitoring that evening? Computer logs? Records of calls made?" "The airport keeps automatic logs of all weather data accessed from staff computers. The tower has recordings of all radio communications. My personal phone has a record of the calls I made to Northbridge operations. All of it should be time-stamped. Can you send me everything you have access to?" "Yeah, give me your email." Ethan spent the next hour gathering records, screenshots, call logs, anything that documented the timeline of that night. He sent it all to Jennifer with a brief cover email explaining each piece of evidence. Then he sat in his office and waited. Sophie got home from school at 3:30. Linda had been picking her up on Tuesdays and Thursdays since Ethan started the new position, giving him uninterrupted work time on his busiest days. Sophie came bouncing into his office with a folder full of papers and a smile that faltered when she saw his face. "Daddy, you okay?" "I'm fine, baby. Just work stuff." "Bad work stuff?" "Maybe. I don't know yet." She climbed into his lap, something she'd been doing less and less lately as she got older and more independent. But today she seemed to sense he needed it, and Ethan was grateful. "Tell me about school," he said. Sophie launched into a detailed description of music class, the first one since the program had been reinstated. They'd gotten to try different instruments, and Sophie had played a keyboard for the first time. She was in love. "It sounded like Mommy's piano," she said, eyes bright. "Can we get a keyboard? Please?" "Yeah, baby, we can get a keyboard." "Really? Really?" She hugged him tight, and Ethan held on longer than necessary, breathing in the smell of her hair, strawberry shampoo and playground dirt and innocence. His phone rang. "Victoria." "I need to take this, sweetheart. Go watch some TV, okay?" Sophie scrambled off his lap and ran to the living room. Ethan answered the call. "I'm on a plane heading back to Denver," Victoria said without preamble. "I just got briefed on Derek's complaint. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I can't even... What's he trying to do?" "He's trying to get you fired and discredit me in the process. The board's been looking for ammunition to use against me since the acquisition. Some of them think I'm too young, too inexperienced. Derek's giving them exactly what they need, A narrative where I hired you as a favor instead of based on merit, where I covered up your mistakes to protect the hire. But none of that's true. I know it's not true. You know it's not true. But Derek's good at building cases. He's got 3 other executives backing his version of events. People who were barely paying attention that night, but are willing to say whatever Derek wants them to say. Ethan rubbed his face with his free hand. So what happens now? HR investigates. They interview everyone involved. They review the evidence. Then they make a recommendation to the board. And if the board sides with Derek? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then you lose your job, and I probably lose mine too. I'm sorry, this is my fault. How is this your fault? I took the job. I should have known there'd be blowback. Ethan, stop. This isn't on you. This is Derek being Derek. Political, calculating, willing to burn everything down if it means he comes out on top. I've been dealing with this for 2 years. I just didn't think he'd come after you. What do you need from me? I need you to document everything from that night. Every conversation, every decision, every piece of evidence that supports the truth. Jennifer Walsh is good at her job, but she needs ammunition to work with. Can you do that? Already did. Sent it to Jennifer an hour ago. Thank you. Victoria sounded exhausted. I'll be back in Denver tomorrow morning. We'll figure this out, I promise. She hung up and Ethan sat alone in his office while Sophie's cartoons played in the other room. 3 weeks. That's all it had taken for his decision to blow up in his face. The weekend was tense. Ethan tried to act normal around Sophie, but she was too observant to miss the worry. On Saturday afternoon, while they were at the park, she asked him directly, Daddy, are you going to lose your job? I don't know, baby. Maybe. Because of the sad lady? No, because of the mean man who was with her that night. Sophie thought about this while swinging. The one who yelled? Yeah, that one. He was mean. I didn't like him. He's not a bad person. He's just scared and angry, and sometimes people do mean things when they feel that way. Like when Emma pushed me at school because she was mad about losing at tetherball. Yeah, kind of like that. I forgave Emma. Are you going to forgive the mean man? Ethan pushed her swing, watched her hair fly out behind her. I don't know yet. I'm working on it. Sunday evening, Victoria called again. I've been going through everything. The tower recordings, the weather logs, your call records. All of it backs up exactly what you said happened. Okay. Derek's version of events falls apart completely under scrutiny. He's claiming you never warned us, but Marcus has a recording from the cockpit where he's literally repeating your warning word for word. He's claiming the weather wasn't that bad, but the official NWS data shows it was worse than forecasted. He's got nothing, Ethan. Nothing that holds up. So we're good? Not yet. The board meeting is Wednesday. Jennifer presents her findings, then the board votes on whether to terminate your employment and censure me for the hiring. But the evidence is on our side. It should be enough. Should be. Yeah, should be. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Victoria said, Can I ask you something? Sure. If this goes south, if you lose the job, what will you do? I don't know. Find something else. Go back to the airport maybe, if they'll have me back. Figure it out as I go. You're not angry? At Derek? Yeah, I'm angry, but being angry doesn't fix anything, so I'll save my energy for whatever comes next. Victoria laughed, but it sounded hollow. I wish I had your perspective. I'm furious. I want to destroy him, end his career, make him pay for what he's trying to do to you, to me, to everything we've built. But you won't. No, I won't, because that's not who I want to be. But the temptation's there. That's what makes you better than him, Ethan said quietly. You feel the temptation and you don't give in to it. She didn't respond to that, just said goodnight and hung up. Monday and Tuesday crawled by. Ethan tried to work, tried to focus on the consulting projects Victoria had assigned him, but everything felt pointless when the whole job might evaporate on Wednesday. Sophie noticed his distraction. On Tuesday night, while they were making dinner together, she stopped chopping vegetables and looked at him seriously. Daddy, whatever happens will be okay, right? Right. Promise? I promise, baby. She went back to chopping, satisfied. Ethan envied her faith that a promise was enough to make something true. Wednesday morning arrived too fast. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Denver time, 7 a.m. Stone Valley time. Ethan got Sophie off to school, then came back home and sat in his office staring at his phone. Victoria called at 7:23. It's starting. Jennifer's presenting now. I'll call you when it's over. Okay. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on this. On me. I haven't done anything except tell the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. She hung up and Ethan waited. 20 minutes, 30, 45. At 8:17, his phone rang. It's over, Victoria said. Derek's complaint was dismissed. The board reviewed all the evidence and determined that his allegations were unfounded. You keep your job. I keep mine. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. What about Derek? He resigned, effective immediately. Turns out this wasn't his first attempt to sabotage someone he saw as a threat. HR found 3 other similar incidents in his history. The board gave him the option to resign quietly or be terminated publicly. He chose resignation. Is he okay? Victoria sounded surprised by the question. You're asking if Derek's okay? Yeah. I don't know. Probably not. He just lost his career, but Ethan, he tried to destroy you. He tried to destroy me. Why do you care if he's okay? Because he's a person, and people who do mean things are usually suffering in ways we can't see. That doesn't excuse what he did, but it explains it. And I can hold both things, being angry at his actions and hoping he finds a way forward. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. You're a better person than I am. I doubt that. No, really. I would have burned him to the ground if I could have. You're sitting there hoping he lands on his feet. I don't know, that's something I need to learn. They talked for a few more minutes about next steps, about projects on the horizon, about getting back to normal. When Ethan hung up, he sat in his office feeling lighter than he had in days. The job was safe. Sophie's stability was safe. Everything was going to be okay. He picked Sophie up from school that afternoon and took her to the music store in downtown Stone Valley. They spent an hour trying out different keyboards before Sophie found one she loved, a Yamaha with weighted keys and a headphone jack so she could practice without driving Ethan crazy. Can we really get it? She asked, eyes wide. Yeah, baby, we can really get it. They loaded the keyboard into the Explorer and drove home. Ethan set it up in the corner of the living room while Sophie bounced around with excitement. She sat down and started picking out notes, teaching herself by ear, completely absorbed. Ethan watched her play and thought about Sarah. She would have loved this. Would have sat right there next to Sophie, teaching her chords and scales and all the things she'd learned as a kid, but Sarah wasn't here, and Ethan had to be enough. He pulled out his phone and sent Victoria a text. Thanks for believing in me, for giving me this chance. It means more than you know. Her response came quickly. You've earned it 10 times over. Now get back to work. We've got a logistics crisis in the Seattle office that needs your expertise. Ethan smiled and opened his laptop. Sophie played her keyboard. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, and for the first time since Sarah died, Ethan felt like he was actually living instead of just surviving. The next few months settled into a rhythm. Ethan worked from his home office, consulting on aviation logistics for Victoria's company, solving problems remotely, occasionally flying to Denver or Seattle or Chicago for important meetings. Sophie thrived in school, threw herself into music lessons, made new friends. Life was good. Not perfect. Nothing ever was. But good. In January, Victoria called with an unexpected request. I need you to come to Denver next week. We're doing a full executive team retreat, and I want you to present a session on crisis management. Me? I'm not an executive. No, but you've got more experience managing actual crises than most of my team combined. I want them to learn from you. Victoria, I don't know. Please, I'm asking as a friend, not as your boss. Ethan thought about it. Okay, but I need to bring Sophie. Her winter break lines up with the retreat dates, and I'm not leaving her with a sitter for 4 days. Bring her. We'll make it work. They flew to Denver the following Monday. Sophie was thrilled with the airplane ride, her first since she was too young to remember. She pressed her face against the window during takeoff, watching Stone Valley disappear below them. The retreat was held at a resort in the mountains outside Denver. Fancy place, the kind with heated pools and 5-star restaurants and staff who called everyone by name. Sophie was overwhelmed at first, then delighted. The resort had a kids program, and she spent her days doing crafts and making friends while Ethan worked with the executives. His session on crisis management was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. Ethan stood in front of 20 executives, people who ran departments and managed budgets bigger than he could imagine, and told them about the night in the fog. He didn't make himself a hero, just walked through the decisions, the preparation, the things that had worked and the things that had been pure luck. He talked about staying calm, about knowing when to trust your instincts, about the difference between taking calculated risks and being reckless. The executives listened like he was teaching them something revolutionary. Afterward, 3 different people came up to ask questions, to share their own crisis stories, to thank him for the perspective. Victoria caught him on the way out of the conference room. That was perfect, exactly what they needed to hear. I just told them what happened, and that's why it worked. You didn't dress it up or make it more than it was. You just told the truth. That's rare in this world. That evening, there was a formal dinner for the executives and their families. Ethan brought Sophie, who wore a purple dress Linda had bought her for Christmas and looked so much like Sarah it hurt. They sat at a table with Victoria, Marcus Reed, and several other executives Ethan had worked with over the past months. Sophie was shy at first, but Marcus drew her out with questions about her keyboard and her favorite songs to practice. During dessert, Victoria stood up to give a toast. "I want to talk about something that happened 4 months ago," she began. "Some of you were there, most of you weren't, but it changed the way I think about leadership, about decision-making, about what really matters." She told the story of that night, the fog, the dismissal, the convoy, the desperate race to Northbridge. She didn't spare herself, talked openly about her arrogance, her mistakes, her failure to listen. "I learned something that night," Victoria said, looking directly at Ethan. "I learned that wisdom doesn't come with a title, that the people you dismiss might be the ones who save you, that sometimes the most important decision you can make is to stop and actually listen to someone who knows better than you do." She raised her glass. "To Ethan Brooks, for seeing what needed to be done and doing it anyway, for showing me what real leadership looks like, and for reminding all of us that at the end of the day, it's not about the deals we close or the money we make. It's about getting everyone home safe." Everyone raised their glasses. Ethan felt his face flush with embarrassment, but Sophie was beaming beside him, proud of her dad in a way that made every uncomfortable moment worth it. After dinner, Sophie was tired. Ethan walked her back to their room, got her into pajamas, tucked her into the big hotel bed. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "I like it here, but I like home better." "Me too." "And I like your job, but I like you better when you're not working." Ethan smiled. "That's fair. So can we go home soon and have boring days again?" "Yeah, we fly home Friday, then we'll have lots of boring days." "Good." She yawned, snuggled into the pillow. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Sophie." He stayed until she fell asleep, then went back downstairs to the hotel bar where some of the executives were still socializing. Victoria waved him over to her table. "Sophie okay?" "Out cold. It's been a big week for her." "For both of you." Victoria sipped her drink. "Can I tell you something?" "Sure." "When I made you that job offer, I did it because I felt guilty. Because I thought it was the right thing to do, a way to make up for how we treated you. But that's not why I kept you on after Derek's complaint. That's not why I asked you to speak today. I kept you because you're genuinely good at this. Because you make everyone around you better. Because you see things other people miss and you care enough to say something even when it's uncomfortable." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Victoria continued, "I've been thinking about what you said that night, about choosing stability over ambition, about being there for the people who matter. I've spent my whole career chasing the next promotion, the next acquisition, the next achievement, and I've been good at it, but I don't know if I've been happy." "Are you happy now?" She thought about it. "More than I was. Still figuring it out, but I'm trying to be more present, more intentional, less focused on winning, and more focused on actually building something that matters. You helped me see that. I didn't do anything except drive through some fog. You did a lot more than that. You showed me what it looks like to have your priorities straight, to know what actually matters, and protect it fiercely. That's not something you can teach in business school." They talked for another hour, not about work, but about life. Victoria told him about her childhood, about parents who'd pushed her toward success from the time she could walk, about never feeling like she was enough. Ethan told her about Sarah, about the year after she died when he could barely function, about slowly learning to live again through Sophie. When Ethan finally went back to his room, it was past midnight. Sophie was sprawled across the bed, taking up 3/4 of the space. Ethan carefully moved her over and climbed in beside her. His phone buzzed with a text. Victoria. Thank you for tonight. For everything. You're changing this company for the better, whether you realize it or not. Ethan typed back, just trying to help where I can. You're doing more than that. Sleep well. Ethan set his phone down and lay in the darkness, listening to Sophie breathe. Somewhere in the building, executives were probably still networking, still making deals, still chasing whatever it was they thought they needed. But Ethan was exactly where he needed to be. In a hotel room in the mountains with his daughter asleep beside him, doing work that mattered, building a life that felt real instead of hollow. It wasn't the life he'd planned. It wasn't the life he'd had with Sarah. But it was a good life nonetheless. And maybe that was enough. Friday morning, they flew back to Stone Valley. Sophie fell asleep on the plane, and Ethan watched the mountains give way to plains, then to the familiar landscape of home. They landed at Northbridge International, the same airport where Victoria's team had caught their charter 4 months ago. Ethan stood in the terminal for a moment, remembering that desperate night, how close everything had been to falling apart. But it hadn't fallen apart. They'd made it. All of them. The drive back to Stone Valley took 45 minutes. Sophie woke up as they turned onto their street, rubbed her eyes, smiled when she saw their house. Home, she said happily. Yeah, baby, home. They unpacked, made dinner, fell back into their normal routine like they'd never left. And as Ethan tucked Sophie into bed that night, she looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. Daddy? Yeah? Are you happy? The question caught him off guard. Yeah, baby. I think I am. Good. I'm happy too. She rolled over, hugged Mr. Rabbit, and within minutes was asleep. Ethan stood in her doorway like he always did, watching her breathe, counting his blessings. He was happy. Not all the time, not perfectly, but genuinely, truly happy in a way he hadn't been since Sarah died. And tomorrow he'd wake up and do it all again. The work, the parenting, the balancing act, sometimes boring, sometimes adventurous, always imperfect. But his, authentically, completely his. That was worth everything. Spring came to Stone Valley the way it always did. Slow, then all at once. 1 week the trees were bare skeletons against gray sky. The next they were exploding with green. Sophie turned 7 in March, and Ethan threw her a birthday party in their backyard with 12 kids from school and a cake shaped like a piano keyboard that he'd attempted to decorate himself and failed spectacularly. Sophie loved it anyway. That was the gift of being 7. You could find joy in lopsided frosting and off-key birthday songs. Ethan had been working for Victoria's company for 6 months now. The rhythm was established, the job felt real instead of temporary, and he'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. He consulted on logistics projects, helped avoid the kind of disasters that had almost derailed the Meridian acquisition, worked reasonable hours from his home office, and made it to every single one of Sophie's piano recitals. Life had settled into something sustainable. Something good. Then Derek Morrison called. Ethan almost didn't answer when the unknown number flashed across his screen on a Tuesday afternoon in April, but something made him pick up. This is Ethan. Ethan, it's Derek Morrison. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I was hoping we could talk. Ethan set down the logistics report he'd been reviewing. I'm listening. I'm in Denver, just for the day. I was wondering if you'd be willing to meet for coffee. I understand if the answer is no. I understand if you never want to see me again. But I need to say some things to you in person, and I'm asking if you'll give me that chance. Ethan looked at the clock. 2:15. Sophie didn't get out of school until 3:30, and Linda was picking her up today anyway. He had time. There's a coffee shop on 6th Street called The Daily Grind. I can be there in 40 minutes. Thank you, really. Thank you. Ethan drove to Denver wondering what the hell he was doing. Derek had tried to destroy his career, had lied to the board, had nearly succeeded in getting both Ethan and Victoria fired. Meeting him for coffee was probably stupid. But Ethan had learned a long time ago that carrying anger around was exhausting. Sometimes you had to let people apologize, even when they didn't deserve the opportunity. The Daily Grind was one of those coffee shops that tried too hard to be quirky. Mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, a chalkboard menu with too many adjectives describing each drink. Derek was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking like he'd aged 5 years and 6 months. He stood when Ethan approached. "Thanks for coming." "Yeah." Ethan sat down across from him. "What did you want to talk about?" Derek didn't waste time. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. For how I treated you that night at the airport. For the complaint I filed. For trying to destroy your career to save my own. All of it. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Ethan waited. There had to be more. "After I resigned," Derek continued, "I spent a few months being angry. Angry at you, at Victoria, at the board, at everyone except myself. I blamed everyone else for what happened. But the truth is, I did it to myself. I saw you as a threat because you represented everything I wasn't. Calm, competent, someone people actually trusted. And instead of learning from that, I tried to eliminate you." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm in therapy now. Have been for 3 months. My therapist suggested I make amends with the people I've hurt. You're at the top of that list." Derek pulled out his phone, opened his email, turned the screen toward Ethan. "I also wanted to show you this. I sent a formal letter to the board last week. Admitted that everything in my complaint was false. Stated clearly and unambiguously that you did nothing wrong, that you in fact saved the acquisition, and that my allegations were motivated by personal jealousy and professional insecurity." Ethan scanned the letter. It was thorough, detailed, and completely exonerating. "The board already cleared me," Ethan said. "This doesn't change anything." "I know, but it needed to be said anyway. For the record. For you. For me." They sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop buzzed with afternoon energy, students studying, remote workers typing, people having conversations that probably mattered more to them than this one did. "Can I ask you something?" Derek said finally. "Sure." "Why did you agree to meet me? After everything I did, you had every reason to tell me to go to hell. But you didn't. Why?" Ethan thought about it. "Because holding on to anger takes energy I don't have. And because people deserve the chance to make things right, even when they've done wrong. Doesn't mean I have to trust you or be your friend or forget what happened. But I can listen to you apologize. That costs me nothing." Derek's eyes were red-rimmed, and Ethan realized the man was fighting back tears. "I destroyed my career, lost my marriage. My wife left me 2 months ago. I'm living in a studio apartment and working as a consultant for a fraction of what I used to make. Everything fell apart because I couldn't just let someone else be good at their job without feeling threatened. I'm sorry that happened to you." "Don't be. I earned it." Derek wiped his eyes roughly. "I just wanted you to know that what you did that night, helping us when we'd been horrible to you, that stuck with me. Even when I was trying to tear you down, I knew you were better than me. I knew you'd done the right thing, and I was trying to punish you for it. That's how screwed up I was." "Was?" "Am, still am. Working on it." Ethan finished his coffee, set the cup down. "Derek, I appreciate the apology. I do, and I accept it. But I need you to understand something. You can't undo what you did. You can't take back the stress you caused or the damage you tried to inflict. What you can do is learn from it and be better going forward. That's all any of us can do." "Is that what you did? After your wife died?" The question caught Ethan off guard. "How do you know about that?" "I looked you up. After the complaint was dismissed, I wanted to understand who you were, why everyone thought so highly of you. Found out about your wife, about how you gave up your career to raise your daughter, made me realize how small my problems were." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He thought about Sarah, about the years of grief, about slowly learning to function again. "Yeah," he said finally, "that's what I did. I had to learn to be a different person because the person I was before couldn't survive losing her. So I became someone new, someone who prioritized different things. It wasn't easy, and I'm still figuring it out. But I'm trying." Derek nodded slowly. "That's what I'm doing now. Trying to become someone different, someone better. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm trying. That's all you can do." They talked for another 20 minutes, not about work or the past, just about life. Derek told him about therapy, about the hard work of examining his own failures, about trying to rebuild relationships with his kids who barely spoke to him anymore. Ethan listened, offered no solutions, just presence. When they finally stood to leave, Derek extended his hand. "Thank you for this, for listening, For not telling me what I deserve to hear. Ethan shook his hand. Take care of yourself, Derek. You too. Ethan drove back to Stone Valley thinking about second chances and redemption and whether people could really change. He didn't have answers, just questions and hope that maybe, sometimes, people figured it out. That evening, after Sophie was in bed, Ethan called Victoria and told her about the meeting. He actually apologized? Victoria sounded skeptical. Yeah, seemed genuine, too. Did you forgive him? I accepted his apology. I don't know if that's the same thing as forgiveness. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I don't think I could have done that. Met with him, listened to him. I'm still angry about what he tried to do. Being angry is easier than letting it go. I get it. Is that wisdom or just exhaustion? Ethan laughed. Probably both. They talked about work for a while. Then Victoria brought up something she'd been thinking about. I want to create a position, Director of Operational Risk Assessment, someone who does what you did that night at the airport, sees problems before they become disasters, speaks up even when it's uncomfortable, helps us make better decisions. And I want you to take it. Victoria, before you say no, hear me out. It's a promotion, significant salary increase, still remote, still flexible, still built around Sophie's schedule, but more responsibility, more influence, more ability to actually shape how this company operates. I'm not asking you to become a corporate drone. I'm asking you to do more of what you're already doing. I need to think about it. Of course, take your time. The position exists whether you take it or not, but I want it to be you. After they hung up, Ethan sat on his porch in the dark, listening to spring peepers in the creek behind the house. The air smelled like new grass and possibility. A promotion. More money. More responsibility. 2 years ago, he would have said no immediately, would have chosen safety over growth, stability over opportunity. But something had shifted. That night in the fog had reminded him that he was capable of more than just existing. The months working with Victoria had shown him that he could still be good at something challenging, could still make a difference. Maybe it was time to stop playing it safe. Sophie found him on the porch 10 minutes later, clutching Mr. Rabbit and looking sleepy. Daddy, what are you doing out here? Just thinking, baby. What are you doing up? Couldn't sleep. Can I sit with you? Always. She climbed into his lap, and they sat together watching fireflies start to emerge in the yard. Sophie was quiet for a while, then said, Daddy, do you ever miss being young? The question surprised him. What do you mean? Like, when you didn't have to work and make decisions and worry about stuff. When you were just a kid like me, Ethan thought about his childhood in Stone Valley, playing in these same creeks, riding his bike on these same streets, believing the world was bigger and better than it turned out to be. Sometimes, but being grown up isn't so bad. I get to be your dad. That's pretty great. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard. The hard parts are what make the good parts matter. Sophie considered this. Like how piano is hard, but that makes it fun when you finally play a song, right? Exactly like that. They sat in comfortable silence until Sophie started to doze off. Ethan carried her back to bed, tucked her in, stood in the doorway watching her sleep. The next morning, he called Victoria. I'll take the position, but I have conditions. Name them. I want the authority to stop projects if I see unacceptable risk. No having to convince 5 layers of management. If I say something's dangerous, it stops until we fix it. Done. And I want to mentor junior staff. Teach them to see what I see, think the way I think. Build a culture where speaking up is rewarded instead of punished. I love that. Done. Anything else? Yeah, if Sophie needs me, everything else stops. No exceptions, no guilt trips, no subtle pressure to choose work over family. We clear on that? Crystal clear. Is that everything? That's everything. Then welcome to your new position, Director Brooks. You start Monday. I'm already working for you. I know, but Monday you start doing it with a better title and a bigger paycheck. Enjoy your weekend. She hung up, and Ethan sat in his office feeling the weight and possibility of the decision. More responsibility meant more stress, but it also meant more impact, more ability to help, more chance to use his skills for something that mattered. Sarah would have been proud, or maybe she would have told him he was crazy. He'd never know. But Sophie would grow up watching her dad do work that meant something, that helped people, that made a difference. And maybe that was the legacy that mattered most. The months that followed were busy. Ethan threw himself into the new role, building out a team of analysts, creating protocols for risk assessment, teaching people to see warning signs before they became emergencies. Victoria gave him free rein, and he used it to transform how the company operated. In July, they prevented a major supply chain disaster by catching a vendor's financial problems 3 months before the vendor declared bankruptcy. In September, Ethan flagged safety issues with a new product line that would have resulted in recalls and lawsuits. In November, he helped negotiate a better acquisition deal by identifying risks the finance team had missed. The work was challenging, sometimes frustrating, occasionally thrilling. Ethan was good at it, better than good, but he never let it consume him. He made it to Sophie's piano recitals, her school plays, her soccer games. She'd decided to try soccer and was terrible at it, but loved it anyway. He had dinner with her every night, read books before bed, stayed present even when work was demanding. It wasn't perfect. Some weeks he was exhausted. Some days he missed deadlines because Sophie was sick or needed help with homework. But he'd built a role that allowed for imperfection, that acknowledged he was a father first and an employee second. In December, almost a year after that foggy night at Stone Valley Regional Airport, Victoria flew to Stone Valley for a day. Not for business, just to visit. Ethan met her at the airport, the same terminal where everything had started. She walked through the doors and looked around like she was seeing it for the first time. It's smaller than I remembered. Most things are. They had lunch at the diner on Main Street, the kind of place with laminated menus and pie that was better than it had any right to be. Victoria ordered coffee and a club sandwich. Ethan got the meatloaf because it was Tuesday, and the meatloaf on Tuesday was always good. "I wanted to thank you," Victoria said after the waitress left, "for everything this year. The company's in better shape than it's ever been, and a lot of that's because of you. You're the one running it. I just help you avoid disasters. You do more than that. You've changed the culture. People speak up now. They flag problems early. They're not afraid to tell me when something's wrong. That's because of you." Ethan shrugged. "I just treat people the way I want to be treated. Listen when they talk. Take them seriously even when they're not important according to the org chart. It's not complicated." "Maybe not, but it's rare. You made me better at my job, better at being human, honestly. I don't know if I've ever said that out loud." "You just did." Victoria smiled, played with her coffee cup. "I'm thinking about stepping back, not completely, but partially. Hiring a co-CEO to handle day-to-day operations while I focus on long-term strategy. I'm good at seeing the big picture, but the constant grind of managing everything is burning me out. I want a life outside of work, relationships, hobbies, things that matter more than quarterly earnings." "That sounds healthy." "It sounds terrifying. My whole identity is wrapped up in being CEO. I don't know who I am without it." "You'll figure it out. People always do." "That's what you keep saying. I'm starting to believe you." After lunch, Ethan drove Victoria to Sophie's school. There was a holiday concert that afternoon, and he'd invited Victoria to come. She'd initially declined, said she didn't want to intrude on family time, but Ethan had insisted. They sat in the gymnasium with 200 other parents and watched first graders perform holiday songs with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Sophie played Jingle Bells on a keyboard set up on stage. She missed 2 notes and kept going like it didn't matter, beaming the whole time. After the concert, Sophie ran over to Ethan and Victoria, still high on performance adrenaline. "Did you see me? Did you see?" "We saw, baby. You were amazing." Sophie turned to Victoria. "Did you like it?" "I loved it. You're very talented." "Daddy got me the keyboard, remember? After you gave money to the school for music class?" Victoria smiled. "I remember. Are you enjoying music class?" "It's my favorite. We're learning about different instruments and composers and everything. Mrs. Chen says I might be able to try violin next year." "That's wonderful." Sophie studied Victoria seriously. "Are you still sad?" Victoria blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "The first time I saw you, you were really sad. Daddy helped you. Are you still sad?" Ethan started to intervene. "Sophie, that's not really..." But Victoria held up a hand. "It's okay." She crouched down to Sophie's level. "You know what? I was sad. I was stressed and scared and worried about a lot of things. But your daddy helped me that night. And I'm not sad anymore. I'm actually pretty happy now." "Good. I'm glad." Sophie hugged Victoria impulsively, then ran off to find her friend Emma. Victoria stood up, and Ethan saw her wipe her eyes quickly. You okay? Yeah, just that kid. She's special. I know. They walked out to the parking lot together. Victoria's rental car was parked next to Ethan's Explorer, which looked even more beat up in comparison. Thank you for inviting me today, Victoria said. I needed this. Needed to remember what actually matters. Anytime. I mean it. You've given me a lot this year. The job, sure. But more than that. You've given me perspective, shown me what it looks like to have priorities straight. I'll never forget that night in the fog, but not for the reasons you might think. I'll remember it because it's when I finally started to grow up. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Victoria got in her car, started the engine, then rolled down the window. One more thing. I'm giving end-of-year bonuses next week. Yours is significant. Don't argue, don't refuse it, just take it and do something good with it. Buy Sophie a piano, take a vacation, put it toward college. Whatever you want. You earned it. Victoria, not arguing, remember? Just say thank you and let me do this. Ethan smiled. Thank you. You're welcome. See you Monday for the strategy call. She drove off, and Ethan stood in the parking lot watching her go. The sun was setting, turning the December sky orange and pink. Sophie was inside the school, probably still talking to Emma about the concert. Life was good. Messy, complicated, imperfect, but good. Ethan's phone buzzed. Text from Linda, Sarah's mother. Tom and I were thinking about Sophie for Christmas. What if we all went to the mountains? Rent a cabin, make it a real family trip? We'd love to have you both. Ethan thought about it. A trip. Family time. Making new memories instead of just holding on to old ones. He texted back, Sophie would love that. Let's do it. The response came quickly. Wonderful. Sarah would be happy seeing you move forward like this. Would she? Ethan would never know for sure, but he liked to think so. Liked to think Sarah would be proud of the life he'd built, the father he'd become, the way he'd taken care of their daughter while still finding room to live instead of just exist. Sophie came running out of the school, chattering about the concert, about Emma's Christmas plans, about how she wanted to learn Silent Night on the keyboard before the holiday break. They drove home together, Sophie talking nonstop, Ethan listening with half his attention while the other half thought about the past year. The fog, the convoy, the job, the changes. All of it had started because he'd refused to stay silent when he saw danger, had insisted on helping even when people didn't want his help. And that simple act, seeing a problem and refusing to ignore it, had changed everything. Christmas came and went. The mountain cabin trip was perfect in its imperfection. Sophie loved the snow, hated the cold, wanted to go sledding constantly, complained the entire time. Linda and Tom were patient and kind, treating Ethan like a son instead of just their late daughter's husband. They built snowmen and drank hot chocolate and told stories about Sarah that made Sophie laugh. On Christmas Eve, after Sophie had gone to bed, Ethan sat by the fire with Linda and Tom. Linda handed him a small wrapped box. We wanted you to have this. Inside was Sarah's wedding ring. Ethan hadn't seen it since the funeral. Linda had kept it, said she'd give it to him when the time was right. I don't know if I can. You can. And you should. Not to wear, just to have, to remember. And someday when Sophie's old enough, you can give it to her. Let her know her mother was loved. Ethan held the ring, felt its weight. Thank you. We're proud of you, Ethan. The way you've raised Sophie, the life you've built, Sarah would be proud too. I hope so. We know so. The new year arrived quietly. Ethan's bonus from Victoria was more than he'd expected, enough to finally replace the Explorer with something that didn't make concerning noises when he accelerated, enough to put a serious chunk into Sophie's college fund, enough to feel like maybe, finally, they had breathing room. In February, something unexpected happened. Ethan got a call from Atlas Regional Airlines, his old employer. They'd heard about his work with Victoria's company and wanted to offer him a position as VP of Operations. It was a dream job, the kind of position he'd been working toward his entire career before Sarah got sick. Excellent salary, prestige, the chance to shape operations at a major regional carrier. And he turned it down without hesitation. The recruiter was baffled. Mr. Brooks, I don't think you understand the opportunity here. I understand perfectly, and I'm grateful for the offer. but my daughter is 7 years old and happy in her school and has friends and a life here. My job is flexible and meaningful and allows me to be the father she needs. I'm not giving that up for a title and a bigger paycheck. Can I ask what it would take to change your mind? Nothing. There's nothing you can offer that's worth more than being present for my daughter, but I appreciate you thinking of me." He hung up and felt nothing but relief. Sophie had a piano recital in March, her second one since starting lessons. She played a simplified version of Für Elise with only minor mistakes and received a standing ovation from the parents in attendance. Backstage, she hugged Ethan tight. "Did I do good?" "You did amazing, baby." "Mommy would have been proud, right?" The question hit Ethan in the chest. Sophie rarely mentioned Sarah anymore, not because she'd forgotten, but because the grief had become part of the background instead of the foreground. "Yeah, sweetheart, Mommy would have been so proud. I wish she could have heard me play." "Me too, but I think she did anyway, somehow." Sophie seemed satisfied with that answer. She ran off to celebrate with the other kids, leaving Ethan standing alone with tears in his eyes and a heart full of things he couldn't quite name. In April, a year and a half after that foggy night at the airport, Victoria called with news. "I'm stepping down as sole CEO. The board approved my co-CEO proposal. I'm bringing in Marcus Reed to handle day-to-day operations while I focus on strategy and growth." Marcus? The pilot? Former pilot. He's been working in aviation operations management for the past 6 months, got his MBA, and frankly, he's perfect for this. He knows the industry, he's calm under pressure, and people trust him. Sound like anyone you know? Ethan smiled. "Sounds like you learned something." "I learned a lot of things, mostly that I don't have to do everything myself. That surrounding myself with good people and actually listening to them is more effective than trying to control everything. You taught me that." "I didn't teach you anything. You figured it out yourself." "Maybe, but you showed me it was possible. That's worth something." They talked about the transition, about what it would mean for the company, about Victoria's plans to finally take a real vacation. 3 weeks in Italy with no laptop, no phone calls, no checking email obsessively. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "What if everything falls apart while I'm gone?" "It won't. And if it does, you'll come back and fix it. That's what leaders do." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who learned some hard lessons and decided to pay attention to them." Victoria laughed. "Well, keep doing it. We need you." In May, Sophie finished 2nd grade. Her teacher told Ethan that Sophie was reading 2 grades above level, excelled in math, and was one of the kindest kids in the class. "She includes everyone," Mrs. Palmer said during their final conference. "When new students join the class, Sophie's always the first to invite them to play. When someone's struggling with an assignment, she offers to help. She's got a good heart, Mr. Brooks. You should be proud." "I am. Every single day." On the last day of school, Sophie came home with a folder full of artwork and papers and a certificate for most improved piano student from her music class. They celebrated with ice cream, Sophie's tradition for marking important occasions. They sat on the porch eating chocolate chip mint while the sun set and discussed summer plans. "Can we go camping?" Sophie asked. "Emma went camping and said it was really fun." "We can do that. Where do you want to go?" "Somewhere with a lake and hiking. And maybe we can bring Grandma and Grandpa." "I think we can arrange that." Sophie was quiet for a moment, then said, "Daddy, are you happy with your job?" "Yeah, baby. I really am. Why do you ask?" "Because you smile more now. You used to look tired all the time. Now you look happy." Ethan pulled her close. "I am happy. You know why?" "Why?" "Because I get to do work that matters and still be here for you. I get to have both. That's pretty rare." "Good. I like it when you're happy." "I like it when you're happy, too." They finished their ice cream as the fireflies started to emerge. Sophie chased them around the yard, giggling, while Ethan watched and thought about how far they'd come. A year and a half ago, he'd been going through the motions, working a job that was fine but not fulfilling, raising Sophie but not really living himself, existing in a holding pattern where nothing changed and nothing grew. Then one foggy night, he'd made a choice. To speak up even when no one wanted to listen. To help even when it wasn't his responsibility. To do the right thing even when it was hard. And that choice had cascaded into 100 other choices, each one building on the last, until his life looked completely different. He wasn't the person he'd been when Sarah was alive. Couldn't be. That person had died with her. But he wasn't the ghost who'd stumbled through those first few years of grief either. He was someone new. Someone who'd learned to balance ambition and presence, work and family, moving forward and honoring the past. Someone who was, finally, actually living. In June, Victoria sent him a package. Inside was a framed photograph of Sophie's drawing, the one she'd made after that night in the fog. A car driving carefully through thick fog, while an airplane waited safely on the runway. At the top, in a 7-year-old's handwriting, "Take the safe road." There was a note attached. "Ethan, this hangs in my office above every award I've ever received. It reminds me every day what actually matters. Thank you for teaching me to see it. Thank you for that night, for your friendship, for everything you've brought to this company and to my life. You changed more than you know. Victoria." Ethan hung the photograph in his office, right above his desk where he could see it every day. Take the safe road. It was good advice. Not safe as in risk-averse or cowardly. Safe as in thoughtful, intentional, focused on what mattered most. Safe as in choosing people over prestige, presence over power, meaning over money. Safe as in knowing when to speak up and when to listen. When to push forward and when to stop and reassess. When to help even when it costs you something. That's what Ethan had learned, not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small choices made over months and years. To be present, to pay attention, to care about people even when, especially when, they didn't seem to deserve it. It wasn't a perfect philosophy. Ethan still made mistakes, still struggled, still had days when he wanted to give up. But he kept trying, kept showing up, kept choosing the safe road even when other paths looked more attractive. And slowly, quietly, his life had become something worth living again. Summer stretched out ahead of them, full of possibilities. Camping trips and piano lessons and lazy afternoons in the backyard. Sophie growing taller, smarter, more herself every day. Ethan doing work that challenged him while still being present for the moments that mattered. It wasn't the life he'd planned, wasn't the life he'd had with Sarah, but it was a good life, an honest life, a life built on showing up, paying attention, and refusing to let fear or grief or other people's opinions dictate his choices. On a warm evening in late June, Ethan sat on his porch watching Sophie practice cartwheels in the yard. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Just finished my first week back from Italy. Remembered how to relax. Forgot how to stress. Highly recommend. Thank you for encouraging me to take the leap. Life is short. Might as well actually live it." Ethan smiled and texted back, "Glad you're learning. Keep it up." Sophie ran over, out of breath from cartwheels. "Daddy, watch this." She proceeded to do a cartwheel that was more enthusiasm than technique, landing in a heap on the grass and laughing. "That was amazing," Ethan said. "I know. I'm getting so good." "You are. Keep practicing." She ran off to try again, and Ethan leaned back in his chair, listened to the sounds of summer, felt the warmth of evening sun on his face. This was it. This was the life he'd built from the ashes of the one he'd lost. Not perfect, not what he'd planned, but real and honest, and worth every hard choice that had brought him here. Somewhere in the gathering dusk, Sophie laughed, pure joy, unfiltered and bright. And Ethan thought, we're going to be okay. We're already okay. We've been okay for a while now. That night in the fog had taught him something essential, that helping people mattered, that speaking up mattered, that choosing right over easy mattered. But the months that followed had taught him something even more important, that building a life worth living wasn't about one dramatic moment of heroism. It was about showing up every day and making choices that reflected your values, about being present for the people you loved, about finding work that mattered and relationships that sustained you and moments that made you grateful to be alive. It was about taking the safe road, not because it was easiest, but because it led somewhere worth going. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.